The fog rolled across Camp Pendleton's night firing range like a living wall, swallowing everything beyond 10 meters. 0200 hours, and the temperature had dropped to 48 degrees Fahrenheit, turning every exhale into a small cloud that merged with the surrounding mist. The range lights, powerful floods meant to illuminate targets at 300 meters, now barely penetrated 20 feet before dissolving into gray nothing. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez stood at the firing line, his frustration evident in the sharp movements of his hands as he gestured at the scoreboard. 30 Marines, 30 of the Corps' supposedly finest, 0 qualifying scores. "This is unacceptable," his voice cut through the damp air. "3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, and not one of you can put rounds on target?" The Marines stood in a loose formation, their breath visible in the cold air. M16A4 rifles held at port arms, night vision goggles pushed up on their helmets, rendered useless by the fog. The electronic target system showed a parade of failures, missed shots, edge hits, complete zeros. Lance Corporal Torres checked his smartphone, live streaming to his buddies back at the barracks. "Yo, check this out. Even Hayes can't hit anything in this soup. Visibility is straight trash tonight." Corporal Hayes, standing 3 positions down, touched the scar on his neck unconsciously. Something about this weather, this specific combination of fog and cold, triggered memories he'd rather forget. Helmand Province, 2018. The ambush. The medic who'd appeared from nowhere. "Maybe we should postpone, Staff Sergeant," Captain Owens suggested, approaching from the observation tower. At 34, he was young for his rank, having fast-tracked through officer candidate school. "These conditions are beyond challenging," Rodriguez spat into the dirt. "Negative, sir. Combat doesn't wait for perfect weather. We adapt, or we fail." At the edge of the group, barely visible in her position near the ammunition table, Lieutenant Gwen Parker methodically checked medical supplies in her kit. The light gray t-shirt she wore was regulation, fitted enough to allow movement without restriction. Her military pants, dark and practical, bore the subtle wear patterns of someone who spent more time in the field than behind a desk. The Russian heritage in her features was unmistakable. High cheekbones, porcelain skin dotted with natural freckles across her nose and cheeks, green eyes that seemed to catch what little light existed. Her light brown hair, pulled into a deliberately messy bun, had a few curls escaping to frame her face. She wasn't supposed to be here. Medical personnel typically didn't attend night shoots unless specifically requested, but she'd heard about the fog, seen the weather reports, and something had pulled her to the range. Private First Class Bennett nudged his buddy. "Check out the nurse. What's she doing here? Someone expecting casualties from paper cuts?" The comment drew snickers from several Marines nearby. Gwen didn't react, her fingers continuing their systematic inventory. Bandages, tourniquets, the special items tucked in the bottom, wrapped in brown paper. Master Gunnery Sergeant Williams, standing apart from the group at 62 years old, watched her movements. 4 decades in the Corps had taught him to read people like weather patterns, the way she handled her kit, the economy of movement, the specific pattern of her breathing. 4 counts in, 7 hold, 8 out. He'd seen that pattern before. Where? "All right, listen up," Rodriguez bellowed. "We're going to run this drill until someone, anyone, puts 4 shots center mass. I don't care if we're here until 0600. Hayes stepped forward. "Staff Sergeant, I'll take another run." His hand trembled slightly as he adjusted his rifle sling. The fog seemed to press closer, and with it, memories. Screaming, blood, someone's steady hands working despite incoming fire. He assumed the prone position, rifle supported on its bipod. Through the scope, nothing but gray. The target, he knew, was at 100 meters. In clear conditions, child's play. Tonight, it might as well be on the moon. The range safety officer called out, "Range hot! Fire when ready!" Hayes squeezed off 4 rounds. The electronic system beeped. 2 edge hits, 2 complete misses. "Next!" Rodriguez's disgust was palpable. One by one, Marines attempted the qualification. Torres live-streamed his failure with false bravado. Bennett blamed his scope. Others simply shook their heads in frustration. Private Mitchell, at least that's what his uniform tape read, maintained his position at the far end of the line. 23 years old, lean build, careful to keep his face angled away from Lieutenant Parker whenever she moved within peripheral vision. He'd volunteered for this assignment, knowing the risks, knowing who else would be here. 6 months undercover, and tonight everything could unravel. Captain Owens pulled Rodriguez aside. Look, I understand the training value, but this is becoming counterproductive. The fog's getting thicker. Rodriguez was about to respond when Master Gunnery Sergeant Williams spoke up, his voice gravelly from decades of shouting commands. There might be a way. All eyes turned to the senior NCO. Williams gestured toward the ammunition table. The lieutenant there. She's been watching our shot patterns, checking wind with her fingers every time someone fires. Old school technique. He paused, studying Gwen's profile. Haven't seen anyone read conditions like that since Stone Bay. The mention of Stone Bay, home of the Marine Corps' Scout Sniper School, created a ripple of interest through the group. Rodriguez scoffed. The nurse? You're joking, Master Guns. Do I look like I joke about marksmanship, Staff Sergeant? Torres had his phone up immediately. Oh, this is gold. The medical officer thinks she can shoot. Hey guys, we got a regular Annie Oakley over here. Gwen finally looked up, her green eyes moving slowly across the group before settling on Rodriguez. She didn't speak. Hayes felt his stomach tighten. Something about those eyes, that specific shade of green. He'd seen them before, through a haze of pain and morphine, but that was impossible. That medic had been a gunnery sergeant, not a lieutenant, and definitely not medical corps. What do you say, Lieutenant? Rodriguez's tone dripped condescension. Want to show these Marines how it's done? I'm sure your medical training included extensive marksmanship. Bennett snorted. Yeah, maybe she can prescribe the target some antibiotics. The laughter that followed was harsh, meant to exclude and diminish. Gwen set down her medical kit with deliberate care. When she stood, her movements had a fluidity that made Williams lean forward slightly. I'll need a rifle, she said quietly. Her voice carried despite its softness, cutting through the fog like a blade. Rodriguez gestured grandly at the weapons rack. Help yourself, ma'am. Fair warning, though. These aren't syringes. More laughter. Torres made sure his phone captured every moment. This is going viral for sure. Nurse versus the United States Marine Corps. Gwen walked to the rack, her fingers trailing over several rifles before stopping at one. She lifted it, checking the serial number etched into the receiver. Her expression didn't change, but Williams caught the slight pause, the way her thumb brushed over specific digits. This one, she said. Hayes watched her clear the weapon, checking the chamber with practiced ease. The way her fingers moved, the specific angle she held the rifle, muscle memory that couldn't be faked. His scar began to throb. Everyone, this is important. If you're enjoying this story about hidden strength and overlooked capability, please hit the like button and subscribe. The thanks button below helps support more content like this. Your support means these stories of quiet professionals can continue. Rodriguez made a show of checking his watch. Whenever you're ready, Lieutenant. The targets are at 100 meters, 4 shots, center mass. Though in this fog, I doubt you'll even see the berm. Gwen moved to the firing line, but instead of immediately assuming a position, she stood still, her head tilted slightly. Her fingers extended into the air, not dramatically, but with subtle movements at different heights. She was reading the wind layers, feeling for the microscopic differences in air density that the fog created. 473, she whispered, so quietly only Williams caught it. Captain Owens stepped closer to the master gunnery sergeant. What did she just say? Grid reference, maybe? Williams responded, but his eyes narrowed. 473. Why did that sound familiar? Bennett couldn't resist another jab. What's wrong, Lieutenant? Trying to feel which way the fog's blowing? Here's a hint. It's everywhere. Gwen ignored him, kneeling slowly and assuming a modified prone position. Instead of lying flat, she kept her body at a slight angle, her support arm creating an unusual triangle with the ground. It was a position Williams had seen exactly once before, during a classified demonstration at Stone Bay in 2017. The way she settled behind the rifle was like watching water find its level. No adjustments, no fidgeting. Her breathing shifted to a pattern that made Captain Owens freeze mid-step. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out, 4 counts hold. The box breathing of advanced marksmen, but with a specific rhythm he'd been taught by only one instructor. Hayes found himself moving closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. The lieutenant's profile in the dim light, the way she tucked that one escaped curl behind her ear with her non-firing hand. His mind screamed impossibility while his memory insisted on truth. Range hot, the safety officer called. The first sound wasn't the rifle firing. It was a soft click, the sound of a selector switch moving from safe to semi, then nothing. Silence stretched for 10 seconds, 20, 30. Any day now, Lieutenant, Rodriguez taunted. Or are you waiting for the fog to clear? Torres zoomed his phone camera on her face. Look at that concentration. She's really thinking she can... The rifle cracked once. The sound was different from the earlier shots, cleaner somehow, as if the fog itself had parted for the bullet. The electronic target system remained silent for 3 long seconds. Then, hit, center mass. The Marines stirred, surprise rippling through the group. Gwen hadn't moved except to work the bolt, ejecting the spent case with economical precision. The brass landed exactly where the previous shooters had, forming a neat line. Lucky shot, Bennett muttered. The second round fired before he finished speaking. Again that clean crack, like the fog was no obstacle at all. Hit, center mass. Captain Owens took another step forward. The breathing pattern, the shooting position, even the way she worked the bolt. It was all familiar, hauntingly familiar. His hand unconsciously moved to his chest, where under his uniform, a small scar marked where shrapnel had been removed. Removed by an instructor who'd stayed calm despite the training accident, who'd breathed in that exact pattern while saving his life. Third shot. The rifle barely moved in recoil. Hit, center mass. Hayes's hand was shaking now. The scar on his neck felt like it was burning. Helmand Province, the ambush, the medic who'd appear through smoke as thick as this fog. The same green eyes, the same steady hands, the same... The fourth shot rang out. Hit, center mass. 4 for 4. The range fell silent except for the distant hum of the base's generators. 30 Marines stood frozen, processing what they'd just witnessed. In conditions where none of them could even locate the target, the medical officer had achieved perfect accuracy. Rodriguez's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment before he managed. That's... How did you... Gwen safed the weapon and rose smoothly to her feet. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. Her expression remained neutral as she turned to hand the rifle back to the armorer. That's when Bennett, frustrated and embarrassed, made his move. No way that was legitimate. Check her ammo. She probably loaded tracers or something. He reached for her ammunition pouches aggressively, his hand shoving against her shoulder. The movement was sudden, forceful, and intended to knock her off balance. 2 things happened simultaneously. First, Gwen's body reacted with ingrained muscle memory, her weight shifting to absorb the push, while her free hand came up in a deflecting motion that spoke of years of close-quarters combat training. Second, and more importantly, the force of Bennett's shove caused the Velcro patch on her left sleeve to tear partially away, revealing ink on her skin beneath. Master Gunnery Sergeant Williams saw it first. Black ink, precise lines, the distinctive crosshairs of a scout sniper tattoo. But not just any sniper tattoo. This one had additional markings, numbers that made his blood run cold. Mother of... he breathed. The partial reveal was enough. The crosshairs were visible, and below them, the number 0317, the Marine Corps Military Occupational Specialty Code for Scout Sniper. But there was more, partially hidden where the patch still clung. 8541, and letters that looked like GB. Captain Owens stepped forward, his voice sharp. Private Bennett, stand down immediately. But Hayes had already seen. His eyes locked on the tattoo, on Gwen's face, on the truth that had been in front of him all along. His voice came out strangled. Helmand, 2018, the medic who saved me, but you were a gunnery sergeant. You were... Gwen's eyes flicked to him, and in that moment, Hayes saw recognition flash across her features before she controlled it. Torres still had his phone up, live streaming everything. Yo, chat, you seeing this? The nurse has a sniper tat. This is insane. Williams moved with surprising speed for his age, placing himself between Gwen and the growing crowd of curious Marines. Everyone back the hell up, now. His tone brooked no argument, but Rodriguez wasn't ready to let it go. Master Guns, what's going on? That tattoo, Williams said slowly, his eyes never leaving Gwen's face, is earned, not given. And those numbers... He paused, doing rapid mental math. 8541 is the old school designation, secondary MOS instructor qualified. The GB... Stone Bay, Captain Owens finished, his voice hollow. Gunnery Sergeant. Stone Bay instructor cadre. His hand moved unconsciously to his chest again. Class 031, March 2019. The vehicle accident during the final screening. You were the instructor who... Gwen remained silent, but her eyes tracked to Private Mitchell, who had gone rigid at the far end of the formation. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds, a lifetime of communication in a glance, before both looked away. "This is ridiculous," Rodriguez blustered, but uncertainty had crept into his tone. "She's a lieutenant in the medical corps. Check her records." Williams pulled out his phone, his fingers moving with surprising dexterity for someone his age. "I am checking, Staff Sergeant, and what I'm finding is very interesting." He looked up at Gwen. "Lieutenant Parker, your service record shows you commissioned in 2021, Medical Service Corps, but there's a gap, 2015 to 2020. 5 years that are just blank." The fog seemed to thicken around them, creating an island of visibility in an ocean of gray. The range lights flickered, casting shifting shadows across faces twisted with confusion and dawning realization. Hayes stepped forward, his voice stronger now. "Show them the rest." Everyone turned to look at him. "The tattoo," he clarified, his hand moving to his neck scar. "Show them the rest of it, because I know what's there. I know because I've seen it before, through smoke and fire and blood." His voice cracked slightly. "Haven't I, Gunny?" The title hung in the air like an accusation and a prayer combined. Gwen looked at Hayes for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Then, with deliberate movements, she peeled back the rest of the Velcro patch. The full tattoo was a work of art and earned honor combined. The Scout Sniper crosshairs dominated the center, with 0317 below. Around it, in smaller text, 8541 GB 2017 to 2019. And at the bottom, barely visible unless you knew to look, 1 shot, 1 kill, in Latin. But it was what surrounded the professional markings that made everyone freeze. Tally marks. Not many. Warriors didn't keep score like movie heroes, but enough. Confirmed kills, each one representing a story, a mission, a moment when death was measured in milliseconds and millimeters. Master Gunnery Sergeant Williams slowly raised his hand to his forehead in salute. Stone Bay's ghost, that's what they called you. The instructor who never missed, who could shoot through anything. Rain, snow, fog, the one who... He paused, his voice thick with emotion. The one who went back to Afghanistan in 2018 on a classified operation and saved an entire squad despite being wounded. Hayes's legs nearly gave out. That was you. You weren't just the medic. You were the sniper who cleared the building, who took out 12 insurgents while dragging me to safety. But the report said, they said you were killed in action. Gwen finally spoke, her voice quiet, but carrying absolute authority. The report said what it needed to say. Captain Owens had pulled up something on his phone, his face pale. Operation Granite Shield, classified, Helmand Province. A Marine sniper instructor, temporarily attached to Special Operations, saved 7 Marines during an ambush. Confirmed 12 enemy KIA while providing medical aid under fire. The operator was listed as KIA to protect ongoing operations. Because I wasn't done, Gwen said simply. The network that orchestrated that ambush had tentacles everywhere, including here, including Camp Pendleton. Private Mitchell shifted at the edge of the group, his hand moving imperceptibly to his sidearm. Only Gwen caught the movement, her eyes flicking to him with warning. Rodriguez found his voice. This is insane. You're telling me a decorated scout sniper instructor just decided to become a medical officer? Why? What possible reason? Maybe, Gwen said, her eyes moving across the group before settling on Hayes. Because sometimes the best way to find an infection is to become part of the body. Sometimes the enemy isn't wearing a different uniform. The weight of her words settled over the group like the fog itself. Torres had stopped live streaming, his phone hanging forgotten in his hand. Bennett backed away, his earlier bravado evaporating. Williams stepped closer to Gwen. The investigation, the missing weapons from the armory last year, the classified equipment that ended up in cartel hands. You're not here for medical training. No, Gwen confirmed. I'm not. Hayes's mind was racing, pieces falling into place. The contractors, the ones who've been hanging around base, pushing for expanded contracts, they were in Helmand too. They were the ones who... His voice trailed off as the full implications hit him. Who sold our position to the insurgents, Gwen finished. Who've been selling more than that, and who have people inside our own ranks facilitating the deals. Captain Owens looked sharply at Rodriguez. Staff Sergeant, who scheduled this night shoot? It wasn't on the original training calendar. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. It was a last-minute addition. Came down from... He paused, his face paling. From the contractor liaison office. They said it was part of the new readiness evaluation program. Gwen's expression didn't change, but Williams saw her weight shift slightly, the subtle preparation of someone expecting violence. 30 Marines, she said quietly, all from different units, all with access to different parts of the base, all here, in the fog, where visibility is zero and accidents could easily happen. The implications crashed over the group like a wave. They weren't here for training. They were here as targets. A new voice cut through the fog, coming from multiple directions at once. Very good, Gunnery Sergeant Parker, or should I say, Lieutenant Parker, though I suppose neither rank really captures who you are. Figures emerged from the fog, 6 of them, moving with the coordinated precision of military contractors, armed, but their weapons held casually, not quite threatening, but ready. The lead figure was tall, broad, with the kind of generic military bearing that could blend in on any base in the world. Mr. Reeves, Captain Owens said, his hand moving slowly toward his sidearm. What are you doing here? Same thing I've been doing for 3 years, Captain. Business. Very lucrative business. Though I'll admit, Gunnery Sergeant Parker here has been making things complicated. Hayes moved instinctively, placing himself between Reeves and Gwen. The motion was automatic, protective, born from a debt that could never be repaid. Reeves laughed. Oh, that's touching. The Marine she saved wants to return the favor. Tell me, Corporal Hayes, do you know why she saved you? Do you know what you witnessed that day that made you such a liability? Hayes's hand went to his neck scar. I don't remember. The trauma, the medic said... You saw the manifests? Gwen said quietly. In the insurgent compound, weapons shipments with U.S. military serial numbers. You probably don't consciously remember, but somewhere in that traumatized brain of yours is evidence that could bring down their entire operation. Reeves's casual demeanor hardened, which is why tonight was supposed to be so much cleaner. A training accident, fog, limited visibility, friendly fire incident. Tragic, but these things happen. Except you had to show up, didn't you, Parker? Couldn't resist protecting your Marines one more time. Private Mitchell had moved during the conversation, positioning himself behind Torres and Bennett, who hadn't noticed the shift. His hand rested on his sidearm, but his body language remained carefully neutral. Williams, despite his age, had also shifted position, his decades of combat experience evident in how he'd placed himself to maximize fields of fire if things went south. 6 contractors against 31 Marines, Captain Owens said, his voice steady. Even with surprise, those aren't good odds. Reeves smiled. Who said it was just 6? More figures emerged from the fog. A dozen, maybe more. It was hard to tell in the murk. But what made everyone freeze wasn't the numbers. It was the Marines among them. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's face went ashen. Peterson, Johnson, what are you doing? 3 Marines in full combat gear stood with the contractors, their weapons trained on their fellow Marines. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Sorry, Staff Sergeant, Peterson said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. But do you have any idea how much they're paying? My kid's medical bills alone. Stand down, Peterson, Williams commanded, his voice carrying the weight of 4 decades of service. Whatever they're paying, it's not worth this. With respect, Master Guns, Peterson replied, you don't know my situation. You don't know what I've had to do to keep my family afloat. Gwen spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. $47,000. That's what you owe, isn't it, Peterson? Your daughter's leukemia treatment. The insurance wouldn't cover the experimental therapy. Peterson's rifle wavered slightly. How did you... Because I've been tracking every Marine they've compromised. Every debt, every pressure point, every moment of weakness they've exploited. She turned her attention to Johnson. Your gambling debts. $83,000 to the wrong people in Oceanside. They threatened your wife. Johnson's face was stone, but his eyes flickered with something that might have been shame. And you, Gwen looked at the third-turned Marine, a young Lance Corporal named Davies. Your brother. They have evidence of his involvement in a hit-and-run. Evidence they fabricated, but convincing enough to ruin his life. Reeves's smile had faded. You've been busy, Parker. But knowledge doesn't change the tactical situation. My people are in position. Your Marines are scattered, confused, and half of them probably don't even believe what's happening. You're right, Gwen said, and everyone turned to look at her in surprise. Which is why I'm not going to fight you. She stepped forward, away from the protection Williams and Hayes were trying to provide. Her movements were calm, deliberate, her hands visible but not raised in surrender. I'm going to make you a deal, Reeves. The contractor laughed. You're in no position to make deals. I have something you want, the real files from Helmand, not the sanitized versions, but the originals. Every transaction, every contact, every payment, including the ones that trace back to Senator Morrison's office. The temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Reeves's hand tightened on his weapon. You're bluffing. Gwen reached slowly into her medical kit, her movements telegraphed and non-threatening. She pulled out a small device, holding it up so everyone could see, a military-grade encrypted drive. Every Wednesday you call a number with a Virginia area code, 571 exchange. The conversations last exactly 3 minutes. You think the encryption is unbreakable, but you're wrong. I've been recording everything for 6 months. Private Mitchell tensed at the edge of the group. This wasn't part of the plan. Gwen was improvising, and improvisation in situations like this got people killed. Reeves gestured, and one of his contractors moved forward, reaching for the drive. Gwen pulled it back slightly. Terms first. You're stalling, Reeves said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. I'm negotiating. There's a difference. She looked at the 3 turned Marines. They walk away. No consequences. Their debts cleared. Their families protected. You don't have the authority to make that promise, Rodriguez protested. No, Gwen agreed, but he does. She nodded toward Captain Owens. Grandson of General Owens, current head of Marine Corps Intelligence. I think a phone call to Grandpa might carry some weight. Owens's face was unreadable. You knew? I know everything about everyone on this range tonight. It's my job. She turned back to Reeves. Your operation is blown regardless. The only question is whether you walk away or get carried away. Reeves laughed, but it was forced. 31 Marines against my force? Even if they believe you, half of them are practically recruits. 31 Marines, Gwen agreed, plus 1 ghost. She moved then, faster than thought, the encrypted drive flying from her hand not toward Reeves, but high into the air, a distraction that drew every eye upward for a crucial second. In that second, everything changed. Gwen rolled left, her hand finding the rifle she'd set down earlier. The motion was liquid, practiced, perfect. The rifle came up, and she fired twice in rapid succession. Not at people, but at the range lights. The massive floods exploded in showers of sparks, plunging sections of the range into darkness. Williams reacted instantly, decades of training taking over. Marines, cover and disperse! The range erupted into chaos. In the fog and sudden darkness, organization dissolved. Contractors fired at shadows, Marines dove for cover, and somewhere in the middle of it all, Gwen moved like the ghost she was nicknamed for. Hayes found himself pressed against a barrier, Rodriguez beside him. What do we do, Staff Sergeant? Rodriguez looked lost, the careful structure of his military world shattered. It was Hayes who answered, touching his neck scar. We trust the ghost. Another light exploded, this time from a different angle. Gwen had displaced, moving through the fog like it was her natural element. Her rifle spoke twice more, and 2 contractors' weapons sparked and went dead. Precision shots that disabled without killing. Captain Owens had his phone out, shouting into it despite the chaos. Emergency priority. Operation Granite Shield Authentication Code 77 Alpha Niner. We need QRF at Range 7 immediately. Peterson, the compromised Marine, stood frozen in the middle of the chaos, his weapon unfired. The weight of his betrayal seemed to physically crush him. Johnson had already thrown down his weapon, hands visible, while Davies was on his knees, sobbing. Reeves roared orders, trying to regain control, but the fog and darkness had become Gwen's allies. Every time his contractors oriented on muzzle flash, she had already moved. She wasn't trying to win a firefight. She was creating chaos, buying time, keeping everyone off balance until help arrived. A figure materialized out of the fog beside Hayes and Rodriguez, Private Mitchell, his weapon drawn but not aimed at them. Corporal Hayes, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, we need to move. She's driving them toward the range tower, but we need to flank. Rodriguez grabbed Mitchell's arm. Who are you really? Mitchell's young face was grim. Someone who has been undercover for 6 months trying to root out this network. And right now, I'm your best chance of surviving this. Hayes looked at the young Marine's eyes and saw something that made him nod. "Lead the way." They moved through the fog, 3 Marines trusting instinct and training. Behind them, the firefight continued, but it was strange. Lots of noise, lots of shooting, but no screams of pain, no calls for corpsmen. Gwen was conducting this battle like a symphony, all crescendo and no casualties. They reached a covered position where several other Marines had gathered, including Williams, who had somehow acquired a rifle. "Master Guns," Rodriguez panted. "What's the situation?" Williams was checking his weapon with practiced ease. "The situation, Staff Sergeant, is that we've been played for fools for months, maybe years. But right now, we have a scout sniper instructor turned medical officer who's keeping about 20 contractors busy while we wait for the cavalry." Torres, crouched nearby with his phone still recording, looked shell-shocked. "This is insane. This can't be real." "Real enough," Williams said. "And if we survive, you're going to delete that video. This is classified so far above your pay grade, you'd need a telescope to see it." Bennett, pressed against a concrete barrier, had found religion in the last 5 minutes. "We need to help her. She's one person against—" A new sound cut through the chaos. Helicopters. Multiple helicopters. Approaching fast. Reeves heard them too. His voice carried over the noise. "Fall back! Everin, fall back!" But it was too late. Spotlights blazed from above, turning night into day. Marines fast-roped from Blackhawks, weapons ready, moving with the precision of a quick reaction force that had drilled this scenario 100 times. "This is Colonel Mitchell, 5th Marines," a voice boomed from a loudspeaker. "Everyone on the range, weapons down, hands visible, comply immediately." The surrender was swift. Contractors dropped weapons, raised hands. The compromised Marines were already on the ground, praying for mercy. In less than 2 minutes, what had been a chaotic firefight became an organized detention operation. Through it all, Gwen remained invisible in the fog until the very end. She emerged near the range tower, rifle safed, moving with the same calm she'd shown throughout. Her light gray t-shirt was dirty but unbloodied, her hair still in its messy bun with those few curls framing her face. Colonel Mitchell, no relation to Private Mitchell, approached her, his expression unreadable. "Lieutenant Parker, or should I say Gunnery Sergeant Parker." "Lieutenant is fine, sir," Gwen replied, rendering a proper salute despite the chaos around them. The colonel returned it. "You've been busy." "Just doing my job, sir." "Your job," the colonel said, looking around at the detained contractors and compromised Marines, "appears to be more extensive than your medical officer designation would suggest." Captain Owens approached, having finished his phone calls. "Sir, I've confirmed with General Owens. Operation Granite Shield is authorized for full disclosure to appropriate personnel." The colonel nodded. "Good, because I have a feeling the paperwork on this is going to be extensive." He looked at Gwen. "You've been undercover for how long?" 2 years, sir, since the Helmand operation revealed the depth of the network." Hayes had approached during the conversation, his face a mixture of emotions. "You let me think you were dead." Gwen turned to him, and for the first time, her professional mask slipped slightly. "You were safer believing that. They were watching you, waiting to see if you remembered anything from that day." "I started to," Hayes admitted. "Dreams, fragments, faces on papers, serial numbers. I thought I was going crazy. You weren't. Your subconscious held on to details that could have gotten you killed if you'd consciously remembered them." Master Gunnery Sergeant Williams had joined the group, his weathered face showing deep respect. "Stone Bay's Ghost. I saw you shoot once, during a demonstration in 2017. Impossible shots through impossible conditions. They said you could read the wind like scripture." "Wind is just physics," Gwen said simply. "Patterns and pressure, like medicine, actually." "Diagnosis and treatment." Rodriguez stood nearby, looking lost. His structured world had imploded. "I don't understand any of this. You're telling me our own people were selling us out? Peterson, Johnson, Davies. I trusted them." "They were victims too," Gwen said, her voice gentler now. "Targeted for their vulnerabilities, manipulated when they were desperate. The real criminals are people like Reeves, who prey on that desperation." Private Mitchell, the real one, not the colonel, had finally approached, maintaining careful distance from Gwen, but close enough to be part of the conversation. Their eyes met briefly, a communication that the others noticed but didn't understand. "Who are you really, Private?" the colonel asked, having noticed the interaction. "Private First Class Mitchell Parker, sir. Naval Criminal Investigative Service, undercover assignment. The silence that followed was deafening. Rodriguez was the first to speak. Parker, as in, my brother, Gwen confirmed. My little brother, who was supposed to be studying engineering at Caltech but decided to follow the family tradition instead. Mitchell, Parker, managed a slight smile. Someone had to watch your six, sis. Even if you didn't know it, the colonel looked between them. This was coordinated? No, sir, Gwen said. I didn't know he was here until 3 weeks ago. Nearly compromised both our covers when we recognized each other. You always were stubborn, Mitchell said, trying to protect everyone by yourself. Runs in the family, apparently, Gwen replied, and for a moment her professional facade cracked enough to show genuine warmth. Captain Owens had been quiet, processing everything. Finally, he spoke. March 15th, 2019. The training accident at Stone Bay. The vehicle rollover. You pulled me out, performed field surgery with nothing but a basic kit. You saved my life. You would have done the same for any Marine, Gwen said. But not every Marine could have done what you did. The precision, the calm under pressure. You had your instructor tabs, could have stayed safe teaching marksmanship. Why go back to combat? Why risk everything? Gwen looked around at the Marines gathering as the scene was secured. Young faces, old faces, all wearing the same uniform, all part of the same brotherhood. Because some fights can't be won from a distance, some enemies hide among us, wearing our uniform, corrupting what we stand for. Someone has to hunt those enemies. Someone has to be the ghost that keeps the Corps clean. Reeves was being led past in restraints. He paused, looking at Gwen with undisguised hatred. This isn't over. You have no idea how deep this goes, how many people are involved. Deeper than Senator Morrison? Gwen asked calmly. Deeper than General Franklin at the Pentagon? Deeper than the Constellation Defense Group with its $14 billion contract portfolio? Reeves's face went pale. I told you, Gwen said, stepping closer. I know everything. Every transaction, every communication, every crime. 2 years of evidence, all documented, all verified. Your network isn't just compromised, Mr. Reeves. It's finished. The contractor was pulled away, but his expression said everything. The game was over. As the range was cleared and secured, the Marines began to gather around Gwen. Not crowding, but creating a respectful semicircle. These were men and women who'd witnessed something extraordinary. Not just the shooting, not just the firefight, but the revelation that one of their own had sacrificed everything to protect them from an enemy within. Hayes stepped forward first. Lieutenant, I never got to properly thank you, for Helmand, for my life. No thanks necessary, Corporal. But there is, Hayes insisted. You didn't just save my life. You gave me the chance to figure out what was bothering me, these fragments of memory. I know what I saw now. I remember the papers, the manifests. If you need me to testify, I'll need all of you to testify, Gwen said, looking around the group. This isn't ending tonight. There will be investigations, trials, hearings. Some of you saw things you didn't realize were important. Some of you were approached and said no. Your testimony will matter. Williams cleared his throat. I think I speak for everyone here when I say we're ready for that fight, ma'am. A chorus of agreement rose from the Marines. The helicopters were landing now, bringing more personnel to process the scene. Among them, stepping out of the lead Black Hawk, was a figure that made everyone snap to attention. General Owens himself. Captain Owens's grandfather, the head of Marine Corps Intelligence, had come personally. He approached the group, his eyes finding his grandson first, checking that he was unharmed before focusing on Gwen. Lieutenant Parker, I've been following your reports for 2 years. Outstanding work. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. This was supposed to be a quiet investigation. You've just turned it into a very public incident. There will be consequences. I understand, sir. But when they targeted 30 Marines for elimination, quiet was no longer an option. The general's stern expression cracked slightly. No, I suppose it wasn't. He looked around at the assembled Marines. You've all witnessed something tonight that officially didn't happen. There will be debriefs, non-disclosure agreements, and a cover story that bears no resemblance to actual events. Are we clear? A unified, "Yes, sir," rang out. But Torres still had his phone in his hand. The general noticed. Lance Corporal, I trust that device has been recording nothing of importance. Torres looked at his phone, then at Gwen, then at the general. With a deliberate motion, he deleted everything from the last 2 hours. No, sir. Nothing of importance. The general nodded approvingly. Good Marine. As the processing continued, the fog began to lift slightly. Dawn was still hours away, but the oppressive blindness was starting to clear. In the improving visibility, the full scope of what had nearly happened became clear. Positions where contractors had set up, lines of fire that would have created a killing field. It would have been a massacre, blamed on friendly fire and adverse conditions. Bennett approached Gwen hesitantly. He was the one who'd shoved her, who had caused the patch to tear and reveal her tattoo. Ma'am, I'm sorry. For earlier, for everything I said. Gwen studied him for a moment. You acted on incomplete information, Private. It's a common mistake. The lesson is to never assume you know someone's story from their surface appearance. Yes, ma'am, I'll remember that. Peterson, Johnson, and Davies were being loaded into a separate helicopter, heading for detention and interrogation. Peterson looked back once, his eyes finding Gwen. She held his gaze steadily, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. He'd been weak, he'd been compromised, but in the end, he hadn't fired on his fellow Marines. That had to count for something. As the sun began to hint at its presence on the eastern horizon, the range looked like a crime scene, which technically it was. Evidence markers, investigators, personnel everywhere. But at the center of it all, a small group of Marines stood together, bonded by what they'd witnessed and survived. So, what happens now? Rodriguez asked. He'd been quiet for a while, processing everything. Now, General Owens said, Lieutenant Parker continues her work. This network has tentacles throughout the military-industrial complex. Tonight was just cutting off one of them. You mean she's going to disappear again? Hayes asked, unable to hide his dismay. Gwen turned to him. Not disappear, but my work isn't done. There are other contractors, other compromised personnel, other threats to the core. But will you be safe? Hayes pressed. After tonight, they'll know who you are. You can't go undercover again. No, Gwen agreed. After tonight, I'm burned for undercover work, which means I transition to a different role. Interrogation, analysis, testimony, the paperwork part of taking down a criminal network. Mitchell, her brother, laughed slightly. You, doing paperwork? That'll be the day. Watch it, Private, Gwen said, but there was warmth in her voice. Or, I'll tell Mom you've been playing commando instead of studying. Mom knows, Mitchell admitted. She's the one who told me to watch out for you. Said you'd try to do everything alone, as usual. The family dynamic, revealed in these small moments, humanized Gwen in a way the revelation of her military prowess hadn't. She wasn't just Stone Bay's ghost or an undercover operative. She was someone's sister, someone's daughter, someone who'd chosen a life of service that demanded terrible sacrifices. Captain Owens had been conferring with his grandfather. Now, he returned to the group. The official story is going to be a successful counterintelligence operation that prevented a security breach. No details about the contractors, nothing about the near miss tonight. The 3 compromised Marines will be quietly processed, likely discharged, but not prosecuted if they cooperate. That's it? Bennett protested. They just walk? They'll never serve again, Williams said gravely. For a Marine, that's punishment enough. Living with the knowledge that they betrayed the corps, even under duress, that's a life sentence. General Owens was preparing to leave, but he paused near Gwen. Lieutenant, there's a position opening at Quantico, intelligence training cadre. Your unique skill set would be valuable there. With respect, sir, I'd prefer to stay operational. There's still work to be done. The general studied her. You've been operational for 2 years straight. You've earned a break. I'll take a break when the job's done, sir. The job is never done, Lieutenant. There's always another threat, another enemy, another mission. But Marines who don't know when to stand down burn out or get themselves killed. It was as close to a direct order as he could give without making it official. Gwen recognized it as such. Quantico could be acceptable, sir, for a while. Good. Report there in 2 weeks. Take some leave first. That's an order. As the general departed and the crime scene processing continued, the original group of Marines began to disperse, but each stopped to speak with Gwen before leaving. Torres, the one who had been live streaming, approached with embarrassment written across his face. Lieutenant, I want to apologize for, well, everything. The streaming, the jokes, the disrespect. You didn't know, Gwen said simply. That's not an excuse, ma'am. I should have been better. Marines are supposed to be better. Then be better going forward, Lance Corporal. That's all anyone can do. As Torres left, Williams approached. The old Master Gunnery Sergeant rendered a slow, precise salute. It's been an honor, Lieutenant. In 40 years of service, I've rarely seen courage like yours. Not just the physical courage, but the moral courage to take on corruption within our own ranks. Gwen returned the salute. The honor is mine, Master Guns. Marines like you are why the Corps is worth protecting. Williams smiled, a rare expression on his weathered face. Give them hell at Quantico, Ghost. Those intelligence weenies won't know what hit them. The sun was fully up now, burning away the last of the fog. The range, which had been a place of blindness and near tragedy, was revealed in stark clarity. Every position, every angle, every spot where death had been waiting, all visible now. Hayes was the last to approach, besides her brother. He struggled with words, starting and stopping several times. Take your time, Corporal, Gwen said gently. In Helmand, Hayes finally managed. When you were working on me, when I was dying, you said something. You said, not today, Marine, not on my watch. And you kept saying it over and over, like a prayer or a promise. I remember. Did you mean it? That it was your watch, your responsibility? Gwen looked at him steadily. Every Marine is my responsibility when I'm in a position to help. That's what the uniform means. We watch out for each other, even when, especially when, the enemy is among us. Hayes nodded, understanding something fundamental. Then let me return the promise, ma'am. You've been on watch for 2 years, alone, carrying this burden. But you're not alone anymore. We know now. We'll watch too. The promise hung in the air between them, as more vehicles arrived at the range, bringing investigators and security personnel. Gwen's brother, Mitchell, had been standing at a respectful distance, but now he approached. 2 years, he said quietly. 2 years you've been doing this, and you never reached out. Never asked for help. Gwen looked at her younger brother, seeing not the undercover NCIS agent, but the kid who used to follow her around base when their father was stationed at 29 Palms. You had your own life, Mitch. Your own path. My path led here anyway, Mitchell pointed out. Maybe if you'd trusted me, trusted anyone, we could have wrapped this up sooner. Or maybe you'd be dead, Gwen said bluntly. Reeves had people everywhere. Any contact between us would have been noticed, analyzed, investigated. Your cover was only safe because I didn't know about it. Captain Owens interrupted their conversation. Lieutenant Parker, we need your preliminary statement. The investigators want to establish a timeline while everything's fresh. Gwen nodded, but before moving, she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a challenge coin, worn from years of handling. She pressed it into Hayes' hand. Stone Bay, Class 031, she said. My instructor coin. You earned it today, Corporal. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about standing your ground when fear would have you run. Hayes looked at the coin like it was made of gold. On one side, the scout sniper crosshairs. On the other, a ghost, barely visible, more suggestion than image, with the words "Silent Professional" around the edge. The investigation tent had been set up at the far end of the range, away from the crime scene processing. Inside, a full team of investigators from different agencies had assembled. FBI, NCIS, CID, and others Gwen couldn't immediately identify. The lead investigator was a woman in her 50s, steel gray hair pulled back severely, eyes that missed nothing. Lieutenant Parker, she said, standing as Gwen entered. I'm Special Agent Harrison, FBI Counterintelligence. We've been following your reports through channels, but tonight's events have accelerated our timeline considerably. I understand, ma'am. Do you? Because from where I sit, you just blew a 2-year undercover operation wide open to save 30 Marines who, frankly, could have been evacuated quietly if you'd given us warning. Gwen met her gaze steadily. With respect, Special Agent Harrison, there wasn't time. I only learned about tonight's operation 6 hours ago when I intercepted a communication meant for Peterson. By the time I'd verified the threat and confirmed the targets, we were already at 0 hour. Harrison pulled up a tablet, scrolling through data. Your intercept logs show the communication came through at 2000 hours. The night shoot was scheduled for 0200. That's 6 hours you could have used to contact us. 6 hours in which Reeves would have been monitoring every communication from this base. Any unusual traffic, any deviation from pattern, and he would have aborted, gone underground, and tried again later. Maybe with a bomb at the commissary or a gas leak in the barracks. At least here, I could control the environment. Another investigator, this one wearing NCIS credentials, leaned forward. You're saying you deliberately let 30 Marines walk into an ambush? I'm saying I turned their ambush into mine, Gwen corrected. Every Marine on that range tonight was specifically chosen. Rodriguez because he had access to training schedules. Hayes because he was a witness to the Hellman documents. Captain Owens because his family connection made him valuable as either a hostage or a casualty that would distract from the real investigation. The others all had similar tactical value to Reeves's operation. Harrison pulled up another file. Your brother, Private Mitchell Parker, NCIS undercover. Did you coordinate with him? No. I didn't know he was here until 3 weeks ago when I saw him at the motor pool. Nearly gave us both heart attacks. Mitchell had been brought in and was sitting at another table, giving his own statement. He looked up at the mention of his name. For the record, he said, my assignment was independent. I was tracking weapons disappearances, didn't know about the contractor connection until tonight. Harrison looked between the siblings. Yet, you both ended up at the same place, same time, investigating connected crimes. That's either an enormous coincidence or we were raised by a Marine who taught us both to recognize corruption when we saw it, Gwen finished. Our father, Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Parker, spent 30 years in the Corps. He used to say that the enemy outside was only half the battle. The real danger was when Marines forgot what the uniform stood for. The questioning continued for another hour, covering every detail of the night's events and the 2 years of investigation leading up to them. Gwen answered everything with the same calm precision she'd shown on the range, never elaborating beyond what was asked, never offering information that wasn't specifically requested. Finally, Harrison closed her tablet. Lieutenant Parker, you realize that your actions tonight, while heroic, have also compromised several ongoing federal investigations. Reeves was just one node in a network that spans multiple defense contractors and potentially reaches into the highest levels of government. I realize that, ma'am. I also realize that 30 Marines would be dead if I'd waited for federal approval to act. Those Marines' lives against potentially hundreds of others who might be endangered when this network reorganizes and goes deeper underground. Gwen stood slowly. With respect, Special Agent Harrison, you're thinking like a federal investigator. Long-term, big picture, acceptable losses. I'm thinking like a Marine. The Marines to my left and right are my responsibility. I don't trade their lives for theoretical future victories. The tension in the tent was palpable. Finally, Harrison nodded slightly. I suppose that's the difference between us. You'll have my agency's full cooperation in the prosecutions that will follow. But Lieutenant, in the future, please try to give us more warning before you blow up our carefully laid plans. As Gwen left the tent, she found a crowd waiting outside. Not investigators or brass, but the Marines from the range. They'd waited through her entire interrogation, standing in the rising heat of the day. Rodriguez stepped forward, looking uncomfortable but determined. Lieutenant, the Marines here, we wanted to say something. Gwen waited. I was wrong, Rodriguez continued. About you, about what strength looks like, about what it means to be a Marine. You could have revealed yourself at any time, claimed your real rank and authority. Instead, you let us disrespect you, mock you, dismiss you, all to protect us from an enemy we didn't even know existed. Behind him, the other Marines nodded agreement. Even Bennett, who had been the most aggressive in his mockery, stood at attention. That's the job, Gwen said simply. No, ma'am, Williams interjected, stepping forward. That's beyond the job. That's sacrifice. That's what makes the Corps more than just another military branch. Torres had his phone out again, not recording, but reading something. Ma'am, I did some research while you were in there. Stone Bay's ghost. You're a legend at the sniper school. They still talk about the shot you made in 2018. 800 meters through a sandstorm, saved an entire patrol. Stories get exaggerated, Gwen said. Maybe, but the Medal of Honor citation doesn't lie. You were nominated but refused it, asked for it to be downgraded to maintain your cover. The revelation rippled through the group. A Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration, refused for the sake of the mission. General Owens had returned, having monitored the interrogation remotely. Lieutenant Parker, a word in private. They walked away from the group, stopping near the shot-up range lights that bore witness to the night's events. The FBI isn't happy, the general said without preamble. I gathered that, sir. Neither is the CIA, NSA, or half a dozen other alphabet agencies that had operations tangentially connected to this network. He paused. But the Commandant of the Marine Corps is extremely pleased. You saved Marine lives and exposed corruption that could have festered for years. Just doing my job, sir. The general looked at her sharply. Stop saying that. What you did went so far beyond the job that we don't even have proper protocols for it. You invented a new form of counterintelligence, becoming the enemy's target to expose them. It seemed efficient, sir. The general actually smiled. Efficient. 2 years of your life, constant danger, complete isolation from support, and you call it efficient. Would you prefer effective, sir? I'd prefer you to accept the recognition you've earned. The Commandant wants to award you the Navy Cross, publicly, make you the face of Marine Corps integrity. Gwen's expression tightened. Sir, that would be inadvisable. There are still elements of this network active. If I become a public figure, they'll disappear completely. Better to let them think I'm being shuffled off to a quiet teaching position at Quantico. The general studied her. You're planning something. I'm planning to teach at Quantico, sir, as ordered. And if, while teaching, you happen to identify compromised personnel among the students, or notice patterns in the intelligence training that suggest continued corruption, then I would report it through appropriate channels, sir. The general shook his head. You can't stop, can you? The mission never ends for you. Does it end for you, sir? That gave him pause. No, he admitted. I suppose it doesn't. Very well, Lieutenant. Quantico it is. But you'll take that leave first. 2 weeks, minimum. That's a direct order. Yes, sir. As the general departed, Gwen walked back toward the group of Marines. The sun was fully up now, the fog a memory, and the range looked almost normal except for the evidence markers and investigators still processing the scene. Hayes intercepted her before she reached the others. Lieutenant, can I ask you something personal? Go ahead, Corporal. In Helmand, when you were working on me, I remember something else now. You were injured too, shrapnel in your shoulder, bleeding pretty badly. But you didn't stop, didn't even slow down. How? Gwen touched her left shoulder unconsciously, where under her shirt, scars traced a pattern of old wounds. You needed help more than I needed to acknowledge pain. It's about priorities. But after, when I was stable, when the medevac arrived, then I dealt with it, Gwen said simply, but not before the job was done. Hayes shook his head. I couldn't do that. Just ignore pain like that. You'd be surprised what you can do when someone else's life depends on it. You stood between me and Reeves tonight, knowing he had superior firepower. That took the same kind of courage. That was different. That was just instinct, protecting someone who saved me. No, Gwen corrected. That was a choice. Every act of courage is. You chose to stand instead of run. That's what makes it matter. Mitchell approached, having finished his own interrogation. Sis, they want us to coordinate our statements for the formal investigation. Make sure our timelines match. Our timelines don't match, Gwen pointed out. You've been here 6 months. I've been here 2 years. We had no contact until 3 weeks ago. Yeah, about that, Mitchell said, lowering his voice. Why didn't you signal me when you recognized me at the motor pool? Because you were safer not knowing. And because... Gwen paused, choosing her words carefully. Because I needed you to be free to complete your own mission without feeling obligated to protect me. Protect you? Mitchell laughed, but it was strained. Gwen, you're the one who taught me everything. Hand-to-hand, surveillance, even how to lie convincingly. I'm here because of you. You're here because you chose to be, Gwen corrected. I just showed you the tools. You decided how to use them. Captain Owens had been coordinating with the arriving units, but now he approached the siblings. Lieutenant Parker, Private Parker, I've been asked to inform you that there will be a formal debrief at 0900 tomorrow. Full joint task force, all agencies represented. Understood, sir, both responded simultaneously, causing a small smile to cross Owens's face. Also, he continued, the Commandant will be attending personally. He wants to hear your full report, Lieutenant, both the official version and the real one. Gwen nodded. I'll prepare both, sir. As the morning progressed and the range was slowly cleared, the Marines who'd been targeted began to understand the full scope of what they'd survived. Each had been chosen for a specific reason. Each represented a threat to Reeves's network, or possessed information that could expose it. Rodriguez had been documenting irregularities in ammunition expenditure without realizing the missing rounds were being sold to cartels. His meticulous records would become key evidence. Torres's social media presence had inadvertently captured background details of several illegal meetings. His constant streaming, which everyone mocked, had created an unintentional surveillance network. Bennett, despite his aggressive personality, had refused a bribe from a contractor 3 months ago and reported it, making him a liability to the network. Each Marine had a piece of the puzzle without knowing it. Reeves had intended to eliminate them all in one coordinated strike, making it look like a tragic training accident in heavy fog. Peterson, Johnson, and Davies were being held separately, awaiting transport to a federal facility. Before they were taken away, Gwen requested and was granted 5 minutes with each. Peterson was first. The staff sergeant looked broken, unable to meet her eyes. "My daughter," he said without prompting. "She's only 7. The treatment was working, but insurance called it experimental, wouldn't cover it. $47,000. Where was I going to get $47,000? "So, Reeves approached you," Gwen said, not a question. "Not directly, one of his people. Said they could help, just needed some information, training schedules, personnel rotations. Nothing that seemed important. Nothing classified. But it escalated." Peterson nodded miserably. "Once they had me for one thing, they pushed for more. Threatened to expose what I'd already done, said I'd lose my pension, my benefits. My daughter would lose her medical care. Your daughter will continue to receive care," Gwen said. "I've already made arrangements. Anonymous donation to cover all expenses." Peterson's head snapped up. "What? How? Why would you?" "Because you're a Marine who was put in an impossible position. What you did was wrong, but why you did it, I understand that. Your daughter shouldn't suffer for your mistakes or their manipulation." Tears ran down Peterson's face. "I was gonna let them kill fellow Marines. I don't deserve—" "No, you don't," Gwen agreed. "But your daughter does. She deserves a chance at life, and she deserves to know that her father, despite his mistakes, was trying to save her." Johnson was different. His gambling debts had made him vulnerable, but there was also resentment there, anger at a system he felt had failed him. 20 years, he said bitterly. 20 years of perfect service and one bad deployment, one IED that scrambled my brains, and suddenly I'm a liability. PTSD, they called it. Gave me pills that made everything foggy, sent me to counseling that didn't help. And when I found my own way to cope, gambling, they threatened to discharge me. "So you blame the Corps." "The Corps abandoned me first," Johnson shot back. "Reeves's people, they understood. They got me help, real help, not just pills and platitudes." "They got you deeper in debt, then used that debt to control you," Gwen corrected. "That's not help, that's exploitation." Johnson was quiet for a moment. "Maybe, but at least they saw me as useful. The Corps just saw me as broken." "The Corps failed you," Gwen admitted, surprising him. "We're not perfect. We don't always take care of our own the way we should. But that failure doesn't justify betraying your brothers and sisters." "Easy for you to say. You're not broken." Gwen pulled up her left sleeve, revealing not just the sniper tattoo, but a network of scars, shrapnel, burns, what looked like a knife wound. "Everyone's broken, Johnson. The question is whether we let that break define us or drive us." Davies was the youngest, barely 22, and he was terrified. "They had video," he said immediately. "My brother, he was drunk, hit someone, drove away. They said they had videos that would send him to prison for 20 years. Did you see this video?" "Pieces. Enough to know it was real. My brother doesn't even remember it happening. He was so wasted." "So, they blackmailed you?" "My brother's all I have left. Parents died when we were kids. I raised him, and I failed. Let him turn into a drunk like our old man. This was my fault." Gwen sat across from him, her expression softer than with the others. "How old were you when your parents died?" 15. "And your brother?" 11. "So, you were a child raising a child? And you blame yourself for not being perfect?" Gwen shook her head. "Davies, you did the best you could with an impossible situation, just like you did here. I agreed to help them. I was going to let Marines die. But you didn't. When the moment came, you threw down your weapon. You chose your brothers and sisters in arms over your biological brother. That took courage." "It took you showing up," Davies countered. "If you hadn't been there, but I was. And you made the right choice when it mattered. That's what the prosecutors will hear from me." As the 3 compromised Marines were led away, Gwen felt the weight of their stories. Each had been targeted at their weakest point, manipulated when they were most vulnerable. Reeves and his network were predators, and they'd studied their prey carefully. The range was finally clear, except for a small group of essential personnel. The morning had turned to afternoon, the heat building toward what would be a scorching day. Gwen had been awake for over 30 hours, but she showed no signs of fatigue. Williams approached one final time. "Lieutenant, I've been in the Corps since before you were born. I've seen heroes and cowards, leaders and failures. But I've rarely seen what you showed today, the ability to be weak in order to be strong. Master Guns, you let us mock you, disrespect you, treat you as less than you are. Most Marines I know couldn't do that. Their pride wouldn't let them. But you understood that appearing weak was its own form of strength. It let you protect us even as we dismissed you." "Pride is a luxury I couldn't afford," Gwen said simply. "No, that's where you're wrong. You have pride, tremendous pride, but it's not in rank or recognition. It's in the mission, in protecting Marines. That's the purest form of pride I've ever seen." Before Gwen could respond, Williams rendered a slow, formal salute. Not the casual greeting between Marines, but the deliberate honor given to someone who had earned ultimate respect. Others saw and followed suit. Captain Owens, Rodriguez, Hayes, Torres, Bennett, even the investigators and security personnel. They all stood at attention, saluting a lieutenant who was so much more than her rank suggested. Gwen returned the salute, holding it for a long moment before dropping her hand. "Thank you," she said simply. "All of you, for trusting me when the truth came out, for standing with me against the threat, for being Marines." As the group dispersed, heading back to their units and duties, Hayes lingered. "Lieutenant, what you said about everyone being broken, did you mean that?" "Every word." "Then how do you keep going? How do you function at such a high level when you're carrying all that damage?" Gwen considered the question. "You know what scar tissue is, Corporal? Tissue that forms over a wound. It's stronger than regular tissue, less flexible, maybe, but stronger. Every break, every wound, every trauma, they all leave scars. But those scars become our armor. They're proof that we survived, that we endured. They're not weakness, they're wisdom written on our bodies and souls." Hayes touched his neck scar unconsciously. "So, we use our damage as strength? We recognize that surviving damage is strength. Every Marine who's seen combat, who's lost brothers and sisters, who's been betrayed or broken or beaten down and still puts on the uniform, they're all walking miracles of resilience." "Like Peterson, Johnson, and Davies?" Gwen nodded. "They broke, yes. But even in breaking, they chose not to fire on fellow Marines. They're wounded, not evil. There's a difference. The investigators might not see it that way. Then I'll make them see it. Those three need help, not just punishment. The Corps failed them in different ways, and Reeves exploited those failures. If we want to prevent future compromises, we need to address the root causes, not just the symptoms." Mitchell had been standing nearby, close enough to hear the conversation. "You're going to advocate for them, after what they almost did?" "I'm going to advocate for justice, which isn't the same as vengeance. They'll face consequences, lose their careers, possibly serve time, but they also need treatment for PTSD, addiction counseling, financial planning assistance. Otherwise, we're just creating more vulnerable veterans for the next Reeves to exploit." A vehicle pulled up, and General Owens stepped out again. His expression was grim. "Lieutenant Parker, there's been a development. Reeves is requesting a deal. He says he has information about an imminent threat, but he'll only share it with you." Gwen's expression didn't change. "When?" "Now. He's in temporary holding at the base security facility. Are you willing?" "Of course, sir." The drive to the security facility was short but tense. General Owens briefed her as they rode. "He's been processed, searched, isolated. He has no leverage except information. Be careful. He's trained in psychological operations." "So am I, sir." The holding facility was a nondescript building on the far side of the base. Inside, past multiple security checkpoints, Reeves sat in an interview room. He was shackled to the table, orange jumpsuit replacing his tactical gear, but his eyes remained sharp and calculating. Gwen entered alone, despite protests from the security team. She sat across from him, saying nothing, waiting. Reeves broke first. "You know this isn't over. I know you're finished. I'm one person. The network has hundreds, thousands maybe, defense contractors, politicians, military personnel at every level. You've cut off a finger, not the head. Every network has vulnerabilities. You've provided yours, communications, financial records, personnel files. We have everything. Reeves leaned forward as much as his shackles allowed. You have data, but you don't have context. You don't know who's compromised and who's clean. You don't know which operations are legitimate and which are covers. Without me, you're looking at years of investigation with half the targets disappearing before you can reach them. What do you want? Witness protection, reduced sentence, minimum security facility. No. The flat rejection surprised him. You haven't heard my offer. I don't need to. You're a predator who targeted Marines at their weakest moments. You tried to murder 30 service members to protect your profit margin. There's no deal that makes that acceptable. Then people will die. There's an operation scheduled for next week. A convoy in Afghanistan, Marines and contractors together. The contractors have been paid to ensure the convoy takes a specific route, right into an ambush. 43 Marines will die if you don't stop it. Gwen studied him for a long moment. Convoy designation? Deal first. No deal. Give me the information, and maybe I advocate for you to serve your time in military rather than federal prison. That's all you get. That's nothing. It's more than you deserve. 43 Marines, Reeves, their blood will be on your hands if you stay silent. Can your network protect you from that in prison? When word gets out that you had the chance to save Marines and chose not to, the threat was implicit but clear. Prison was full of veterans, many of whom would take a very personal interest in someone who'd betrayed the Corps. Reeves was silent for 30 seconds. Then, Convoy Romeo 77, departing Bagram next Thursday 0600 local. They're supposed to take route Irish to FOB Chapman, but the contractors will claim intelligence about IEDs and divert to route Bronze, where the ambush will be waiting. Exactly. Gwen stood to leave. That's it? Reeves called after her. I give you actionable intelligence and you just walk away? I'll verify the information. If it's accurate, I'll make my recommendation about your incarceration. If it's false, you'll serve every day of your sentence in solitary. It's accurate, but Parker, you need to understand something. This network, it's not what you think. It's not just about money. Gwen paused at the door. Then what is it about? Power. Reshaping the military-industrial complex. Creating a new paradigm where corporations and military merge completely. Your father understood. That's why they had to silence him. Gwen turned slowly. What did you say about my father? Reeves smiled, the expression cold. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Parker died in a training accident 5 years ago. Except it wasn't an accident, was it? He was investigating irregularities in equipment procurement, getting close to exposing the early stages of our network. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Gwen walked back to the table, her movements deliberate and controlled. You're lying. Am I? Check the accident report. Mechanical failure in a vehicle that had just passed inspection. Your father was meticulous about safety, never had a single accident in 30 years of service. Then suddenly, catastrophic brake failure on a simple training evolution? Gwen's hands remained steady, but Hayes, watching through the one-way glass with the others, saw something shift in her posture, a coiling tension like a spring being compressed. If you had anything to do with my father's death, not me personally, I was still building my network then, but my predecessors, the ones who started this, they saw him as a threat, just like they saw you as a threat when you started following in his footsteps. Is that why you tried to kill me in Helmand? Helmand was supposed to be clean. You were supposed to die a hero's death, stopping the investigation cold. Instead, you survived and went underground, became a ghost we couldn't track or target. Gwen leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Give me names. Everyone involved in my father's death. That's a different deal. Full immunity, new identity, relocation to a country of my choosing. No. Then you'll never know. And Parker, that doubt will eat at you. Every night, wondering who was responsible, who's still out there, who might target your brother next. The mention of Mitchell was a mistake. Gwen's control, legendary among those who knew her, cracked slightly. Her hand moved faster than thought, slamming down on the table inches from Reeves's shackled hands. The sound echoed like a gunshot. My brother is off limits. My family is off limits. You threaten them, even hint at threatening them, and I will end you. Not legally, not professionally, but permanently. Am I clear? For the first time since his capture, Reeves looked genuinely afraid. Something in Gwen's eyes, a glimpse of the operator who'd survived impossible odds, who'd eliminated threats in places where law and civilization were distant concepts. Clear, he whispered. Gwen straightened, her control reasserting itself. The names, Reeves. Everyone involved in my father's death. You have 24 hours to decide if you want to make that deal. After that, the offer disappears. She left without another word, but everyone who watched through the glass saw the change. This was no longer just about corruption and compromised Marines. This was personal. Outside the interrogation room, General Owens was waiting. "Lieutenant, what he said about your father needs to be investigated, sir, thoroughly." "Agreed. I'll pull the original accident reports, have them reviewed by independent investigators." He paused. "Gwen, if this is true, if your father was murdered, then I've been playing the wrong game," Gwen finished. "I thought I was fighting corruption, but if they killed my father, this is war." Mitchell had arrived, having heard about Reeves's revelation. "Gwen, Dad's accident, I always wondered. The timing, right when he was pushing for that procurement investigation. You knew about the investigation? I was 17, but I wasn't blind. Dad was stressed those last weeks, more than I'd ever seen him. He kept saying something was wrong with the contracts, that equipment was being marked delivered, but never showing up. And then he died before he could report it," Gwen said flatly. "Conveniently." Captain Owens had been quiet, but now he spoke. "Lieutenant, I need to ask, is this going to compromise your objectivity? Personal vendettas and intelligence work don't mix well." Gwen turned to him, and he saw not the passionate anger he expected, but cold, calculated determination. "Captain, everything I've done for the last 2 years has been personal. Every Marine I've protected, every criminal I've exposed, it all mattered to me personally. My father taught me that the Corps is family. When someone attacks family, it's always personal. The trick is using that emotion as fuel, not letting it drive. And can you do that? Use it without being used by it? I've been doing it since Helmand, since I realized the enemy wasn't just foreign fighters, but Americans selling out their brothers and sisters for profit. My father's death, if Reeves is telling the truth, is just one more crime to add to their ledger. One more reason to see this through to the end." The base was coming alive with activity as word of the night's event spread through unofficial channels. Marines who hadn't been on the range were hearing stories that sounded like fiction. A medical officer who was actually a legendary sniper, a firefight with contractors, corruption reaching the highest levels. As they walked back toward the main administrative building, Marines they passed would stop and stare. Some saluted, others just watched with expressions of awe and curiosity. Gwen had become a legend in a single night, but it was a legend built on 2 years of sacrifice and decades of skill. Torres intercepted them near the headquarters building. "Lieutenant, I know you said to delete the video, and I did, but others saw it. The live stream, before everything went crazy. It's out there, people talking about it online." "How much?" Gwen asked. "Just the shooting, you making those 4 impossible shots. Nothing about the investigation or the contractors, but you're kind of famous. They're calling you Fog Ghost and the Impossible Shot." Mitchell laughed despite the situation. "Great, my sister's a meme." "It could complicate things," General Owens said. "If you become a public figure, then we use it," Gwen said, thinking quickly. "Let the story spread. A female Marine making impossible shots through fog. It's compelling, distracting. While everyone's focused on that, we continue the real investigation quietly." "Hide in plain sight," the general mused. It could work. The debrief the next morning was held in the base's main conference facility. Representatives from every conceivable agency were present, along with the commandant of the Marine Corps himself, a 4-star general whose presence made everyone sit straighter. Gwen presented her report with clinical precision, walking through 2 years of investigation, hundreds of pieces of evidence, and the network of corruption she'd uncovered. She used maps, charts, financial records, and communication intercepts to paint a picture of systematic betrayal that reached into every branch of the military and dozens of defense contractors. The commandant listened without interrupting, his expression grave. When Gwen finished, he stood. "Lieutenant Parker, what you've uncovered is simultaneously the greatest intelligence success and the most damning indictment of our security protocols I've ever seen. How did we miss this?" "We didn't miss it, sir. We ignored it. Every time a Marine raised concerns about missing equipment or suspicious contracts, they were told to stay in their lane. Every time someone questioned why contractors had so much access and influence, They were labeled troublemakers. The system was designed to protect itself from external threats, not internal corruption. And your recommendation? Complete restructuring of contractor oversight. Independent investigation units that report directly to the Inspector General, not through the normal chain of the command. Mandatory financial disclosure for anyone involved in procurement, and most importantly, protection for whistleblowers. That's a massive overhaul. Yes, sir, but anything less and we'll be back here in 5 years with another Reeves, another network, more dead Marines. The Commandant nodded slowly. Consider it done. I'll take this to the Joint Chiefs today. He paused. Lieutenant, there's also the matter of your status. You're technically still undercover, but that cover is blown. You can't go back to being a simple medical officer. I understand, sir. I'm promoting you to captain, effective immediately. You'll lead the new counterintelligence unit we're creating specifically to prevent this kind of infiltration. Full authority, resources, and autonomy. Report directly to me. The promotion was significant. Jumping ranks was almost unheard of in the Marines, but no one in the room objected. What Gwen had accomplished transcended normal military achievement. Sir, Gwen said carefully, I'm honored, but I requested assignment to Quantico, the training cadre. That was before we knew the full scope of what you'd uncovered. We need you operational, not teaching. With respect, sir, teaching might be the most operational thing I can do. If we train the next generation to recognize and resist corruption from the start, we prevent future networks from forming. Besides, she glanced at General Owens, Quantico is perfectly positioned to monitor both training programs and intelligence operations. Hidden in plain sight. The Commandant considered this. You're proposing to use a teaching position as cover for continued counterintelligence work? I'm proposing to teach counterintelligence by doing counterintelligence. My students would learn by participating in real investigations, supervised and controlled. We'd create a pipeline of Marines trained specifically to resist and detect corruption. Innovative, the Commandant admitted, and it keeps you low profile while maintaining operational capability. Very well, Captain Parker. Quantico it is. But you report to me monthly, and if we need you in the field, you go. Yes, sir. As the debrief concluded and officials began dispersing to implement the dozens of actions items Gwen's investigation had generated, she found herself momentarily alone with her brother. Captain Parker, Mitchell said with a slight smile, has a nice ring to it. It feels wrong, Gwen admitted. Dad never made it past gunnery sergeant in 30 years. I jumped to captain in 7. Different corps, different needs. Dad would be proud. Would he? Or would he wonder why his daughter succeeded where he failed? Why I survived when he didn't? Mitchell grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Dad died trying to expose this corruption. You're finishing what he started. That's not success where he failed. That's completing his mission. You're his legacy, Gwen. We both are. If you've found value in this story of service and sacrifice, please remember to hit subscribe and the thanks button. Your support helps ensure these important stories continue to be told. Before Gwen could respond, Hayes approached with several other Marines from the range incident. They all wore their dress blues, unusual for a normal duty day. Captain Parker, Hayes said formally, we wanted to do this properly. He held out a small box. Inside was a shadow box, the kind Marines use to display important mementos. But this one was different. It contained a single item, a photo from the range, taken by one of the investigators, showing Gwen in her shooting position, with fog swirling around her. Below it, a brass plate read, "The Ghost Who Guards, Semper Fidelis." We all contributed, Rodriguez explained. Every Marine who was on that range. You saved our lives. But more than that, you showed us what real strength looks like. Bennett stepped forward, the Marine who had shoved her, who had mocked her most cruelly. Ma'am, I've been thinking about what you said, about not judging from surface appearances. I've been doing that my whole life, judging people by how they look, what rank they wear, whether they seem strong or weak. You taught me that real strength is invisible until it's needed. We all learned something, Torres added, and we wanted you to know that we won't forget. No matter where we go, what units we're assigned to, we'll carry this lesson. We'll watch for corruption, protect our brothers and sisters, and remember that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. Gwen accepted the shadow box, her composure cracking slightly. Thank you, all of you. But remember, I didn't save you alone. You saved yourselves the moment you chose to trust me, to fight back, to stand together. That's what makes Marines different. We fight for each other. William stepped forward last. Captain, I have something else. He pulled out a small, worn book. This was your father's. He left it in my office the day before he died. Said he wanted me to read something in it. I never got the chance to give it back. Gwen took the book, a collection of Marcus Aurelius's meditations, heavily annotated in her father's handwriting. She opened it to a marked page and read her father's note. True strength is not the absence of weakness, but the management of it. The greatest warriors are those who conquer themselves daily. He knew, William said quietly. Maybe not the specifics, but he knew something was coming. He was preparing, just like you've been preparing. The revelation that her father might have anticipated danger, might have been taking steps to expose the corruption before his death, hit Gwen harder than she expected. She clutched the book, her father's last thoughts, his final guidance. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the windows, they could see vehicles arriving, media vans with satellite dishes. Word had leaked, as it always did, and the press had arrived to cover the story of the Fog Ghost and the corruption scandal. General Owens grimaced. This is going to be a circus. Captain Parker, are you prepared for this? I've been preparing for 2 years, sir. Not for combat or investigation, for fame, for scrutiny, for every aspect of your life being examined and judged. Gwen looked out at the gathering media, then at the Marines around her. They can examine all they want. I've got nothing to hide anymore. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. The full scope of what she'd done over 2 years, the lines she'd crossed, the choices she'd made, not all of it could become public. Some secrets had to remain buried to protect ongoing operations and the Marines who'd helped her. Captain Parker, a public affairs officer, appeared at the door, looking harried. The press is requesting a statement. The Commandant has authorized you to speak if you're willing. What's the narrative? Gwen asked. Hero Marine exposes corruption, saves lives. You're to be the face of Marine Corps integrity, proof that the system works, even though the system failed, especially because the system failed. You're proof that individual Marines can make a difference, can stand up to corruption even when it seems impossible. Gwen considered this. It was propaganda, but it was also true. And if her story inspired other Marines to stand up, to speak out, to resist corruption, then maybe the publicity served a purpose. I'll make a brief statement. No questions. She walked outside, the California sun bright after the fluorescent lights of the building. Dozens of cameras turned toward her, reporters shouting questions. Gwen stood at the makeshift podium, waiting for quiet. When it came, she spoke clearly and simply. My name is Captain Gwen Parker, United States Marine Corps. Last night, I and 30 other Marines prevented an attack on our base by individuals who had infiltrated our contractor system. This was the culmination of a 2-year investigation into corruption within the defense contracting industry. She paused, looking directly into the main camera. I want to be clear about something. I'm not a hero. I'm a Marine who did her job. The real heroes are the Marines who stood with me when the truth came out, who chose loyalty to the Corps over personal safety. They're the ones who deserve recognition. A reporter shouted despite the no questions rule. Is it true you made impossible shots through heavy fog? Gwen started to ignore the question, then reconsidered. In the Marine Corps, we have a saying, the difficult we do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer. Last night took 2 years. That's how long the impossible takes when you're fighting an enemy that hides among your own. Another reporter. What about the contractors who've been arrested? What can you tell us about the network? I can tell you that they failed. They failed because they underestimated the integrity of Marines. They thought they could buy us, intimidate us, eliminate us. They were wrong. The Marine Corps has faced enemies foreign and domestic for nearly 250 years. We're still here. They're not. She stepped away from the podium, but one more question rang out. What's next for you, Captain Parker? Gwen paused at the door, looking back. The next mission. There's always a next mission. Inside, away from the cameras, she found Reeves's lawyer waiting. The man was everything you'd expect. Expensive suit, calculated smile, shark eyes. Captain Parker, my client has information about your father's death. He's willing to share it for the right price. I don't negotiate with lawyers any more than I negotiate with terrorists, Gwen said flatly. Then you'll never know the truth. I know enough. My father died investigating corruption. I'm finishing his investigation. Whether his death was murder or accident doesn't change my mission. The lawyer looked surprised. You don't want justice for your father? Justice is putting every member of this network behind bars. Justice is preventing future Marines from being targeted. Justice is systemic change, not personal vengeance. She walked away, but the lawyer called after her. He has names, dates, proof. Gwen stopped, but didn't turn. Then he can provide them to federal investigators, or he can keep them and rot in prison knowing he could have made a deal. His choice. As she continued walking, Mitchell fell into step beside her. You don't want to know? Of course I want to know, but wanting and needing are different things. If I make a deal with Reeves for personal information, I compromise the entire investigation. Every defense lawyer would use it to claim bias, emotional manipulation. Some cases might get thrown out. So, you sacrifice personal closure for the mission, just like Dad would have. They reached Gwen's temporary quarters, where she'd been staying during the investigation. It was sparse, almost monastic. A bed, a desk, a chair. No personal items except for a single photo of her family from 5 years ago, before her father's death. When do you report to Quantico? Mitchell asked. 2 weeks, after the leave General Owens is forcing me to take. Where will you go? Gwen picked up the photo, studying her father's face. Arlington, I need to visit Dad's grave. Tell him it's finished, or at least this part is finished. Want company? No. This is something I need to do alone. Mitchell understood. Some conversations, even with the dead, required privacy. A knock at the door interrupted them. It was Hayes, still in his dress blues. Captain, sorry to intrude. I needed to ask you something before you leave. Mitchell excused himself, leaving them alone. What is it, Corporal? The Marines who were compromised. Peterson, Johnson, Davies, what happens to them? They'll be court-martialed, probably serve time, definitely lose their careers. But you're advocating for leniency. I'm advocating for justice that includes rehabilitation. They were victims too, in their way. Hayes nodded slowly. I've been thinking about that. About how easy it would be to break if someone found the right pressure point. My pressure point was almost you. Me? When Reeves revealed you'd saved me in Helmand, when he threatened you, I almost did something stupid, almost gave him leverage. The only thing that stopped me was remembering what you said about choosing to stand instead of run. You made the right choice. This time. But what about next time? How do I know I won't break if someone finds a different pressure point? Gwen considered the question. You know you might break because you're human, but you also know what breaking costs because you've seen it. Peterson, Johnson, Davies, they're living examples of what happens when we let desperation override duty. Learn from their mistakes. Is that what you do? Learn from others' mistakes? I learned from everyone's mistakes, including my own. Especially my own. Hayes stood to leave, then turned back. Captain, will you be safe at Quantico after everything that's happened? Safety is relative, Corporal, but I'll be among Marines. That's the safest place I know. As Hayes left, Gwen began packing her few belongings. 2 years of living as someone else, maintaining a cover that required her to be less than she was, and it all fit in a single bag. The book Williams had returned, her father's meditations, went in last, wrapped carefully in the dress blues she'd worn as a lieutenant for the last time. Tomorrow she'd be Captain Parker, headed to Quantico to build something new. But tonight, she was just Gwen, daughter of a murdered Marine, sister to an undercover agent, keeper of secrets that could destroy lives or save them. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Your father would be proud. A friend. She deleted it without responding. Friends didn't hide behind anonymous messages, but the sentiment, even from an unknown source, resonated. The next morning, as she prepared to leave Camp Pendleton, a formation had assembled. Not ordered, not official, but dozens of Marines who had heard about what happened who wanted to see the ghost off properly. They didn't speak, didn't cheer. They simply stood at attention as she passed, rendering silent salutes. It was more meaningful than any words could have been. Williams was at the gate, waiting. Captain Parker, before you go, he handed her an envelope. From the Marines on the range, we took up a collection. It's not for you. It's for Peterson's daughter's medical fund. Anonymous donation, like you mentioned, $400,000. Every Marine on base contributed when they heard the story. Gwen took the envelope, her throat tight. That's enough to cover everything. Marines take care of their own, even the ones who stumble. Peterson failed us, but his daughter didn't. She deserves a chance. Thank you, Master Guns. Don't thank me. Thank the Corps. This is what we do. We hold the line, we protect the innocent, and we never leave anyone behind, even when they've left themselves behind. Gwen drove away from Camp Pendleton, Hayes saluting from the roadside. She returned it through the window, heading for Arlington Cemetery. At her father's grave in Section 60, morning mist swirled like the fog that had started everything. The headstone read, Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Parker, devoted father, faithful Marine, Semper Fi. She knelt, placing her captain's insignia on the stone. It's done, Dad. The network you discovered is exposed. The foundation's cracked. Wind stirred the trees. She could almost hear his voice. Outstanding, Marine. Reeves confirmed you were murdered, but I won't chase that rabbit hole. You'd want me focused on the mission. Mitchell appeared through the mist. Couldn't let you do this alone. I asked for privacy. Since when have I listened? They stood together silently. Father's grave, 2 children continuing his mission. There will be more corruption, Mitchell said. That's why we keep watch. Her phone buzzed. Convoy Romeo 77 safely rerouted. 43 Marines saved. Reeves's intelligence was good. He gave them up to save himself, Mitchell observed. Maybe. Or maybe he remembered what being American means. At the entrance, General Owens waited. Captain Parker, Senator Morrison wants to meet, claims he has information. It's a trap, Mitchell warned. Traps work both ways, Gwen repeated. I'll meet him. That evening, in her hotel, an anonymous message arrived, a photo of her father with younger Reeves and others, taken a month before his death. Her father had been close to exposing them all. Hayes knocked. Passing through Virginia, he lied transparently. She let him in. He saw the photo. Your father's killers? Possibly. You're going after them? To finish what he started. Not vengeance, justice. But it's personal. Everything's personal when you care enough. Hayes struggled with words. About being broken, scar tissue being stronger. What if some breaks can't heal? They all heal. Just not always how we expect. Sometimes healing means accepting damage as part of who we are. You've weaponized your damage. Every wound becomes ammunition to protect others. That's lonely. This is my life. Some get families. I get to be the ghost keeping them safe. You saved my life in Helmand, gave me something to aspire to. I applied for intelligence school. The price is everything, Hayes. I'm ready. After he left, General Owens called. 3 more contractors offering testimony. The network's collapsing. Good, we press the advantage. Wounded animals are dangerous. So are ghosts with nothing to lose. Midnight. Gwen performed her ritual, checking weapons, reviewing intelligence. Tomorrow, Morrison, another trap to turn against its maker. 30 Marines alive. Peterson's daughter getting treatment. Her father's killers exposed. Not victory. This war never truly ends, but progress. Her father's voice echoed from Marcus Aurelius. What we do in life echoes in eternity. Her echoes were just beginning.
The stories end here, but the journey continues. Many new episodes are waiting for you. And if you enjoy, please take a moment to like, subscribe to our EV Story channel, and turn on the bell. See you in the next story.